Um, Great. Thanks, Mahmoud, for taking the time to join us today. This is a webinar that's hosted by the Urban Water and Climate Resilience in the Arab Region Community of Practice. Without any further ado, I'm actually going to hand it over to my colleague, Hussein Rosen, Regional Project Coordinator for UN Habitat based out of Amman. Go ahead and get us started, Hussein. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hussein Mohsen. As Sarah informed you, I'm the regional coordinator for the Adaptation Fund project, the Resilient Water Solutions Against Climate Change in Jordan and Lebanon. Thank you again for being with us today. And as we gather today, it's crucial to recognize that the Arab region is one of the most water scarce regions globally. And with the urban areas facing extreme pressure on water availability and other challenges, climate change, population growth, and influx of refugees have only intensified these challenges. So our collective efforts are more important than ever. With more than 60% of the population living in urban areas in our region, the need for resilient water management and climate adaptation strategies is urgent. As you can imagine, this community of practice aims to share knowledge how to do that and share innovative solutions and best practices that we will listen to today through our esteemed guests and partners. This to enhance the urban water resilience and climate adaptation across the region. Together, we can make a significant impact and build a more sustainable future for our communities, and this is what we aim for in the project and in UN Habitat in general, and in collaboration with our partners. I would like to thank all the speakers in the advance, and to thank ESCWA for coordinating this, and a special shout out to our colleagues in Lebanon, especially Layal, for putting this together and being so active to get this activity together as well, in collaboration with colleagues from UNESCO that I really thank as well. I will not take more time from you. I will keep it for the more interesting discussion today, and I will hand over. Thank you again for being with us, and look forward for the interesting discussions today. Back to you, Sarah. Sarah, we can't hear you if you are speaking.
Great. Thank you so much, Hussein. So first, a reminder that we do have interpretation available, so you can listen in Arabic or English. Oh, I am. Can you hear? You can't hear me now? Let me turn off my video. Are you able to hear me better now without video?
Yeah, much faster.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, you can hear me? Okay, great. Okay. I'm not sure. I'm having internet issues today, so I'll just keep the video off for a bit. So thank you to everyone for joining us. please keep Okay, great. That interpretation is available as well.
Sarah, you're cutting out. We hear you, and then we don't.
I think we lost her as well.
Yeah,
Like
the
Sarah is not
connection
with us.
is very unstable, I think.
Okay, maybe we
I'm
should
not sure if she
improvise.
still has video on or not because I have my
No
screen.
video, no.
Okay.
So let's give her 1 minute to rejoin. We apologize for this technicality. But this is the new digital world. You can expect such things, huh?
If she's working out of Lebanon, I think we also are having issues.
Yeah, actually, that's the problem because she's not in Lebanon, so
we shouldn't.
Okay, well, so Melissa, do you think that she will be able to join again, or we should proceed?
I think so, but maybe we can proceed with starting the presentations by the time she joins again. So.
Okay. Perfect. So allow me maybe then to welcome Mr. Raji Masri from Morris to give us his contribution to today's community of practice meeting, focusing on the work that they did within the Adaptation Fund project in Lebanon under the component one that deals with urban master planning and mainstreaming climate change within that context. Without further ado, please, Mr. Raji, and I would remind you that there is interpretation if you want to use the channel underneath. It will be somewhere in bottom place.
Okay. I just want to say I was supposed to be the third speaker.
Okay. It's my bad. But yeah, if you are willing, you can start. No worries.
Let me go back. Sorry. I'll do that. Just 1 second. I'm sorry. Are you still with me?
Yes.
I cannot see where I can. Just 1 second. Give me a second. I need to go back to be able to share, and my Zoom has changed the screen in front of me. Just give me a second. Yeah. That's okay. Okay, I got back. Okay, if you want, let me try to share then my screen. And 1 second.
Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt.
back.
If you guys already moved ahead, I finally managed to get my internet, I think, in a better.
Yeah, it seems that we also like changed the order of presentation by mistake. It's my bad. But if you prefer, Sarah, I think we can go
okay.
the original plan. It's
Whatever.
up to you. Now you lead.
Sorry, we can go ahead and first with Raji. If Raji already has his presentation and he's up and ready to go, that's totally fine. Okay, we're ready for that.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we
can
see it.
If you want to press play, yes, thank you.
I was very much supposed to be at the end, so it will climax with the implementation in Lebanon. I can go through what we're doing, and then we can see very much the other two, and then I'll be at the end if you want. Then we can further discuss what I presented. Okay. Let's say now this is very important, and now we are implementing an adaptation fund project. It's funded by the Adaptation Fund. It is implemented by UN Habitat, the Lebanon office, and I represent the consortium Morris CETEC. We're both working internationally, but Morris is a Lebanese company, consulting company, and CETEC is based out of France. And then we are doing the territorial planning of the, if you want to call it, the Zahli Qada, which is in the central part of Lebanon, in the Bekaa Valley between the two mountain chain, a quite vulnerable area that is host to a very, very large number of refugees or displaced persons, and it is under a lot of stress itself due to various things. And today we are facing climate change as is. Winter is not here yet, so we have less than 20% of expected rain. Normally we get 4 or 5 times more rain by this time. So we're living it. And then with urbanization, we're getting a lot of stress. So I'm just presenting now this case study, and then we move ahead. We are doing a climate resilience territorial planning and for the Zahli district. In the map, you can see we are on the eastern side of the Mediterranean, and it's a small country, but with a lot of, if we want to call it morphological, two big mountain chains, so we get a lot of rain, a lot of water, a lot of snow normally, and we have varied terrains, very much a country based on agriculture for resilience, but also on a lot of trade and commerce due to its location and so forth. The project objective itself is to mainstream climate adaptation and gender into territorial strategy. Very much needed subject, and within the master plan, because there is very much traditionally we were looking two-dimensional into territorial planning, and very, very hard to protect agricultural land, to protect land that is vulnerable, to protect natural resources, especially after the years of war and the kind of lack of somehow governance that relate to scientific principles in the management of the natural resources. We are addressing water issue as the main driver here. And the project itself very much has an institutional capacity whereby we're strengthening the authority in decision making, but the local authority especially to account for climate change in their decision making. The project main stack is really to do a strong diagnostic, then develop the territorial strategy, then go down and do master plans and and then we're selecting within the CASA 8 municipality to do territorial planning and a master planning level in each one of them to give them the directional framework to work within. And then there is an observatory. We've worked on a huge list of indicators and used also what the UN Habitat is using and so forth, and also developed beyond that indicators that are very much project specific, very much aligned with the goals and objectives. And these all will be under an observatory, and the local decision making and even the central decision making on the Directorate General of Urban Planning will be taking those into considerations, and then they will follow and they will be accessible and feed into this observatory that should be helping them in their territorial planning. So this is in a nutshell. We have a lot of challenges because of the crisis. Everybody heard of the crisis that was going on in Lebanon, etc., with the stress of the displaced people over there, economic crisis, political instability, and so forth. A huge urban sprawl. People don't realize internationally and nationally how much demand for urbanization due to relocation of people and dislocation of people, it's expanding. And people are finding very much, through urbanization, development projects, and so forth, we are really developing to accommodate a lot of the population and the plan and the economic interest, and also to keep the economy going. Things are being accommodated on the expense of the natural resources. So it's very much a demand-driven at the end of the day. It becomes a demand-driven with everybody working on working with the population rather than with the natural resources and the what we have as a supply. And this particular project now is helping us very much into highlighting this issue from the window of climate change to really bring in the scientific principle, the socioeconomic principle, the issue of resilience and sustainability in urban planning. So it's forcing us through the climate change to rethink our strategy and also to add this scientific element and to add the long-term sustenance of our natural resources and the cleanliness of the water, not only accessibility, but you want a clean water, you want a good health, you want a good well-being for society. But due to all our crises, we didn't have really long-term vision. It was before a long time we did have that, and now it's more of a romantic. It's a thing that we want to green Lebanon, and we want to. We'll still in our daily think of a country of bounty, but in the as time goes on, our natural resources are getting affected. So therefore, a good comprehensive vision is really needed. And then I think now we are, through these projects and others, are able to bring down to the local authority thinking together, interministerially, inter-authority, inter-municipalities to work within a vision. And then you have water and soil pollution they have to work on. You have an infrastructure that either underdeveloped or not very well, or over, let's say, not so green infrastructure. We can talk it this way. And you have the electricity shortages and so forth, fragmentation in land use planning due to urbanization. So you don't have this fragmentation, especially of agricultural land, and a continuation of corridors of green areas and so on. And here throughout, when I speak about green areas, I mean undeveloped land also, whereby it doesn't have to act as for agriculturally, but it could be very much a riparian environment or a place where groundwater is getting replenished from. So you have strong infiltration areas where the land is breathing. So we look at the climate change and we look what is affected on the Sahli district. We've done a lot of projections. We look back at the studies that we had before, especially from 1995 to 2004, and so forth. And then within it all, we're looking very much on the, if you want to call it, all the forecasts that are there. So this, and we've done the exercise whereby you go into the RCPs, and then you go up into the worst case scenario, good case scenario, and the optimistic case scenario, and we look very much at the current scenario. And I'm showing now slides that show the calculation that we've used. On the left, you see all the the list of the towns that are there. And when we look at the climate risk evolution in the whole district, we look at it, but then we go into a scenario with SSP2, the RCP 4.5, and then we don't want to be too optimistic, but somehow this is somehow realistic. And then we go to a worst case scenario with RSP 8.5. We looked into this. This slide in front of you very much looks at our methodology as we moved on. And what we did is that we looked at compiled all the auxiliary data from transportation, hazard, climate issues, and so forth. And then we studied against that also the land use that is there. How are we dealing with the land use land cover, and look back from 1998, and then we studied the progression to 2005 up to 2023. We took all of those, and then we generate from the auxiliary planning variable spatial maps. The others, we created all this data and fed into the model, and then very much gave our prediction. And when we're looking at that, we did this multi-layer round by looking at the water, by looking at the urban planning, by looking at the various layers, biodiversity, and other, and so on, to create from the model into simulation of our future land use. And what we've done also, we've done, if we want to call it, from 1998 to 2017, and studied what's going on, and did the simulation of what would it be like in 2023. Then we got a very detailed satellite imagery, studied it in detail, and compared the two. And when we compared the two, we found them quite aligned, which means our forecasting as a worst case scenario is very much a real thing, and we're doing the right thing. So we were able to do our projection, not only looking at the Office of the Climate Change here, what they are doing in their forecasting, and what is internationally being looked at, but we made it a case study for ourselves also to do our forecasting and then kind of compare it. Our baseline situation, I don't want to say a lot here. We're looking in detail into 7 municipalities, count them, and then we checking all the challenges that we have. We're looking at their vulnerability levels, and then we're applying. When we apply the SSP2, RCP 4.5, we find that look, a few municipalities at high risk, more municipality medium risk, and some of them maybe not as much. And then we look into an extreme situation, and we find all municipality at medium risk, and a lot of them are at high risk. And then all of those are being done and shared, and through consultation with the local authorities and so on, so that they go along, and the project is developing with their knowledge, and then they are gaining knowledge, and they will be ready to use the platform and the observatory and our results so that they will adopt them. And at the same time, we are working with the Director General of Urban Planning, who is also step by step. And like this, we will be able for the future to kind of be a bit innovative and take it as a platform to get an approach that will integrate climate change, climate planning into the territorial strategy. Now, at the same time, we have developed with the local authorities through workshop and so on, a vision for the area. What they care about the preserving their heritage, about their natural wealth, and so forth. And this will help us maybe with time it change the laws and the regulations that are guiding our territorial planning and our also construction within those particular areas. And then maybe there is a need of relocation of certain activities, if you want to say, or land use to other areas so that they have a better future or a good well-being for the citizen in 2050 and so forth. With them, I'm sharing, we're looking at the guiding principles that are sustainability, resilience, participatory planning, equitable land tenure, mainstreaming gender participation and equality, etc. Very much looking into NPA, which is this is the the National Physical Master Plan, and this plan looked at the whole and then really very much looked at the future, how best to preserve areas, how to really plan on a large scale for the whole country master plan to protect very much the natural resources that we have so that they can allow for a better living in the future.
Apologies, Raji. If you wouldn't mind wrapping up in the next minute or so, so that we are sure to have time for all the presenters. Thank you so much.
Let me make it in a 2 minutes. I'll finish it. Okay.
Excellent.
So
Thank
what
you.
we did this, we took the master planning. We look also a very recent good exercise on the largest city in the area, Zahli, the master plan that's taken there, and we'll follow the directionals of it. And then we want resilience to water challenges. We've established the goals: sustainability, protection of natural heritage, strengthen the resilience of farmers, and sustainable water management. From this, and I'll go now quickly, we've came up with the scenarios. And with the scenarios, you can have, if we continue as business as usual, we end up with a cemented plane. And then we move and we look at the strategic equilibrium. And then if we are very optimistic, perfectly green. And then we are working with the local to accept at least a strategic equilibrium. And from that, we have created a desired planning scenario that everybody is now committed to, or is getting a bit slowly committed to. From there, we are creating what are the things that we should account for in all the planning of it for each municipality. And these are under agreement, and we already developed them. And then you get a district level design planning scenario that will, we have the urban expansion, but it will be under guidelines from a mountainous areas to vulnerable mass movement to the wildfire, water, etc., and infrastructure. And this is the last two slides I will show is very much the starting of the exercise on each particular municipality. Okay, and here we have whereby the different zonings for the various, and we are rezoned some of the areas so that they'll have sustenance and they will account for climate change. And slowly they are starting to accept that we can continue development, but we have to integrate green infrastructure, and we can retrofit our cities to account for the climate change and the future. And thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Raji. That's a really rich presentation. There's a lot of content there, and I'm sure that we'll have questions on that. I'm actually going to hold off on the Q&A until the end just to make sure that we have time for all of our presenters, but we will share the presentation materials afterwards, as well as the contact information of our panelists if you'd like to follow up on that great overview of climate mainstreamed urban planning in the context of Zahle. Moving on now to our presenters from UN Habitat, we have Serene, who is an environmental lawyer, and she's leading the UN Habitat's flagship program, Rise Up. She also serves as the special advisor to UN Habitat's deputy executive director. And we also have Lee, who is an urban resilience specialist, and he led the development of UN Habitat's multi-layered vulnerability assessment methodology, also under the Rise Up program. So without taking any more time away from this really interesting initiative, I'll go ahead. I think, Serene, you're starting.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Actually, it was super interesting to listen into Raji's methodology and how SIMP6 is used. And I was just wondering also, in case there's more time needed, I would love to hear more from him as well. And we'll keep ours shorter to see if we can have more questions and answer time, because I think it's a really cool tool, especially for the region. So congrats, Raji, for that. Let me start sharing and you can tell me if you can see it. Is that working well?
Yes, I see it.
Awesome. Now I just need to get, I can't see you guys anymore, but I think we'll make it happen. So yeah, here I'm guided also by my colleague Lee, as you've introduced kindly. Thank you so much for that. It's an absolute honor to be at the Community of Practice organized by UN Habitat ROAS as well as ESCWA in a really critical region, in the Arab region, as it's faced a quite water scarce situation impacted by climate change, as well as a convergence of crises such as migration, displacement, and other issues. So I think it's a, on the one side, interesting region, on the other side, one that really needs that innovative solution making, that evidence base. And so we would love to introduce to you today the Urban Vulnerability Atlas, which derived from the RISE-UP portfolio. And RISE-UP stands for the Resilient Settlements for the Urban Poor, which is a flagship program of UN Habitat. I'll click us through some of the information you actually already know, and you've seen also presented at the very beginning. We're very grateful for that. But just to maybe recap a little bit, currently we're at the tipping point of urbanization, where more than 55% of the world's population live in urban areas. You see oh, I hope I'm not frozen, sorry. You see in a special heightened increase of that rapid urbanization in the MENA region, where it's believed to tip into 70% already, 2045. So 5 years earlier than actually the global average will do. And cities are, by IPCC's report, facing climate effects much more severely, as it is the density of infrastructure and assets which also defines actually the core of the IPCC risk framework. So the further infrastructure and assets and people are exposed, sensitive, and have the lack of adaptive capacity, the more they are vulnerable to climate impacts, for the ones that are not maybe climate experts. But then we have also that urban sprawl, which is another one of the threats in the region that really disrupts ecosystems, that really disrupts or stresses limited resources, and further basically reduces our capacity to be more resilient for those climate impacts. And where we have currently 1 billion people living in informal settlements, we have 81 million people of them living in the MENA region. And most of them, they live in really fragile areas and fragile land, susceptible to climate impacts, but also other social and environmental and urban and development issues. So it's really a matter of like understanding urban areas, or the way we grow in the future, and our trends and projection, understanding them in the context of climate change, biodiversity stresses, migration fluxes, displacement, and so on. So that is where basically that multi-layer that also Raji mentioned is really critical to understand, so that any movement we do in terms of innovative solutions, resilient solutions, captures the vulnerabilities at multiple scales. Hopefully that comes through. The next slide.
It did. You're good. It's not frozen.
Okay, thank you. It's a little bit dodgy at my end. Thank you. On the other side, we have really that issue if you look at the different climate impacts. So, for example, extreme heat, or water scarcity, or rising temperature, or sea level rise. They really impact in the MENA region by quite some extent. As we have already heard, it's one of the most water scarce regions. So 12 of world's 17 most water stressed countries are in the region. And I think that is quite stark, as well as per capita, the renewable water availability has dropped by 75% over the past 50 years. So this is on one side projection, and on the other side unstable water use, but it's also driven by climate change. And we've seen rising temperatures as well as heat stresses, with more and more heightened temperatures of 50 degrees, posing severe risk for health and straining actually also energy resources. And then also to mention, I think it's important that the MENA region has over 50 major port cities in the Arabs in the region. So climate change and its sea level rise as one of the impacts is pretty much affecting and threatening infrastructure and livelihoods that are settled along these coastal cities as well. So not to make everything bleak, but to mention at the last as well, there's also this huge funding gap that we see, not only in general for climate adaptation. Adaptation mitigation is not at par. We have that call from the Secretary General to really push for a parity between both, but especially in the Arab region, we have an estimated of 600 billion of climate finance gap for adaptation that we will see increased in the future. So climate is not one of the only crises, as you know, and therefore we really hope we can flip the script a little bit and look also at the opportunities at hand that derive from such a situation. One thing we like to always stress in general in a global study has shown that 60% of the world's infrastructure has yet to be built to meet the 2.5 billion people that are yet to come to this world. That means, especially for the MENA region as well, that infrastructure, it's a time-sensitive opportunity to integrate climate resilience as well as adaptation principles into such planning processes. So to ensure that today's infrastructure that serves people is resilient for the scenarios that we're facing in 2030, as Ravi already mentioned, SSP 2 to 5 and so on. So that is really a time-sensitive opportunity as well. And then I often hear like innovation is really difficult to implement. But if you have that opportunity to that spur of infrastructure gap that is about to come, then of course innovations such as like cooling or the way we design housing and streets and so on can actually contribute to temperature decrease or conserve water issues. This is a matter of planning ahead for it. And just to stress one more thing, maybe also that it's often said that those interventions are very costly, but we will need to look into project life cycles, infrastructure life cycles, and actually what does it generate over time for such societies. And there's been a World Bank study that says the investment into climate resilience and adaptation into a resilient infrastructure has a 4-to-1 return on net benefit in middle-income countries. So that brings also co-benefits and climate mitigation and protection of biodiversity issues into the same spiel. So it's quite a stark argument that it's actually not an increased investment into resilience or increased cost, it's an efficient cost that you have at the upfront for an investment over the longer time period. So that is where RISE-UP as a flagship, Resilient Settlements for the Urban Poor, derived from all of these different challenges, but also opportunities, and really trying to understand how can we mobilize finance that's anyways already limited, where vulnerabilities are the highest, and how can we then design a whole pipeline of bankable projects that focus on those heightened vulnerabilities and multi-layered vulnerabilities. How can we steer the policy environment, and how can we overcome the basic climate paradoxon that the ones that have least contributed to the climate change actually suffering the most. Just very quickly, just so that it's understandable also where our tool comes from. So RISE-UP works in 28 different countries, mostly in LDCs, developing countries, and a few SIDS, and has a portfolio of 150 million. Most of our portfolio derives actually from the vertical funds, which also means that our requirements in terms of like understanding evidence base for vulnerabilities had to be high, because the requirements for such vertical funds are very high. And so that allowed us to understand what is actually missing in our programmatic planning. And that one of the biggest challenges was always understanding a standardized approach for urban vulnerability and measures. and understanding multi-layered vulnerabilities in a standardized way. So we derived from that 28 country portfolio, derived to a tool. It's called the Urban Vulnerability Atlas. It's an online platform that Lee will introduce also in a little bit via video and walking you through, as well as has a methodology behind it, a little bit similar to SIMP6, but much more without any paywall, as well as much more usable by someone who's not an expert. So usually we work with local governments, national governments, and so on to be able to do these assessments. And that assessment methodology is called the multi-layered vulnerability assessment. So we'll walk you through that. The principles of it are quite similar to what Raji also mentioned. So it's geospatial information that will then be, or also quantitative and qualitative data that will receive a spatial dimension to it through visualization of data. It's multidimensional because we look at layers of urban, of climate, and biodiversity. Each of them have a composite of indicators that define their different layers and a weighting system, as well as multi-scala. And what we also try to do is that anticipatory movement of data and understanding information was easier for climate, as there are a lot of climate projection data. It is much more difficult for biodiversity or urban, as such things as like urban sprawl, urban expansions, and so on. They're not always measured or reflected in any of our master plans, but they are guesstimates, or they are based on policies, or they are based on consultation processes, which then has informed our multi-layered vulnerability assessment methodology. So it's a step-by-step guide with 3 bigger stages, from preparation to mapping and analysis and intervention planning. And including in the intervention planning is also to have responsive, bankable projects that mitigate the identified vulnerabilities under step 2. So that would then inform, hopefully, policy making. It can inform programming, and it can inform investment decisions of either local government or national government, of intergovernmental transfers from national to local, and so on, so to really tackle where vulnerabilities are the highest. This is how it looks like. We've done a bit of a screenshot, and I believe from here, Lee, you're taking over so to do a little bit of a deep dive of the tool in itself and play a little bit with the dimension. I think then it hopefully becomes a bit more clear.
Thank you, Serene. So I will be sharing a video. Hopefully the audio works for you all. That gives a summary of what this tool is. But while we wait for this, I just need to get access. So if you don't mind unsharing, Serene, and I can hopefully share the video. But yes, our Atlas, like Serene has said, is a virtual platform. It's interactive to assist practitioners, local leaders, policymakers, and donors in the identification, appraisal, and evaluation of vulnerability hotspots. So this is where the dimensions we mentioned, climate change, urban vulnerability, and biodiversity loss intersect. We look at their interconnections, their interrelations, potential conflicts between them. So to highlight specific 30 meter by 30 meter zones of higher risk and higher vulnerability. Within that, we also look specifically at 3 main categories. We look at the vulnerabilities felt by people in communities. So often the vulnerable and marginalized communities living in precarious hotspots in areas where there's low access to services, but high risk of flooding, for example. We also look at infrastructure, assets, and systems. So different urban systems or infrastructure services within a city, and how they are impacted by different vulnerabilities, whether it be related to climate change and the adverse impacts, or other shocks and stresses. And then we look at ecosystems and biodiversity too. So this is flora, fauna, a range of different indicators are used or can be used based on availability to assess. Serene, would you?
Serene, I think that if you unshare your presentation, then Lee can share his video.
Thank you.
I was wondering if I'm the bottleneck, sorry.
No, no problem. And also, Leah, if for any reason your video sharing doesn't work, we do have a backup plan. So,
Okay. Fingers crossed. It has worked before. This is not the first time, so we do use it. It's just more so on Teams.
I still can see the screen.
yeah, I still see your screen, Serene.
Mine, still. Interesting. I clicked on stop sharing and I thought it stopped sharing. Does it stop sharing?
Okay, now I see anymore. Yep, your screen is off.
Okay, thank you.
Are you able to see my screen, the video?
Not quite yet. Coming through in just a moment. While that's loading, I just wanted to highlight one of the comments we had from Tarek, who's actually from ESCWA. He commented that we overlay actual temperature extreme projections on cities and land use maps to assess impacts and propose effective, no regret adaptation measures, which our panelists can comment on that afterwards for sure. And the RICAR data that is produced as one of ESCWA's initiatives can support this evidence-based analysis, which I will say in the case of Jordan and some of the adaptation fund project sites we're working on there, we did use RICAR data for some of the same exercises that Raji did in the case of Lebanon. So we can share more information on that afterwards. Lee, I'm not able to see your screen or video.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not sure why.
No,
for
no
me it
problem.
says you can see, but if you have the backup plan, that would be amazing.
Sure. Melissa, are you able to share the video on your side? Because we had it set up before in case.
Yeah, just a second. Just let me
Sure.
do
Thank
it.
you so much.
Great, thank you.
Maybe to bridge the gap in the meantime. Luckily, yeah,
Can you see it?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Just let me.
Go ahead, Serene, if you wanted to finish your thought before we launch the video.
Yes, for Tarek also, we have understood then that one of the dimension on climate needs, of course, multiple indicators to it to really understand how to the impact of different climate impacts. And I'm just looking at the different indicators, and extreme heat and temperature is also part of it. And then combined with the urban layer on land use, it brings those two dimensions actually also together. Yeah, so but hopefully the video explains it also a bit further. Thank you so much for your question or that contribution. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And in the interest of time, if you don't mind, if you start at like 1 minute and 4 seconds, that would be great. If you just be, yeah, click here.
Just 1 minute, 4 seconds.
Yes, that would be excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll start at 1, if that's...
Developing countries. The UVA is an interactive platform that assesses and visualizes the complex vulnerabilities of urban areas. By examining climate hazards, urbanization patterns, socioeconomic factors, and biodiversity loss, the UVA identifies vulnerability hotspots, areas where risks to people, infrastructure, and ecosystems overlap and intensify. This empowers decision makers and communities to make informed choices that strengthen urban resilience.
The UVA is built upon vulnerability profiles resulting from the Multi-Layered Vulnerability Assessment, or MVA, in which 7 cities globally have already engaged in a step-by-step process to strengthen their capacity along the way. Stage 1. Preparation identifies key contributors and organizes the assessment in alignment with community goals. Stage 2. Mapping and analysis focuses on data sourcing and analysis to identify urban vulnerability hotspots, producing key maps that reveal overlapping risks. Stage 3, intervention planning, translates findings into actionable projects with collaboration from various stakeholders.
Now, let's explore the key features of the UVA. It includes interactive maps, customizable visuals, and data layers that combine to reveal each city's unique vulnerabilities. Its customizable, user-friendly design allows stakeholders, ranging from government officials to local citizens, to access and engage with the data, making it an essential participatory tool for advancing urban resilience. The UVA integrates urban, climate, and biodiversity data, enabling users to explore multiple dimensions of vulnerability simultaneously. Its intuitive interface supports targeted adaptation planning, helping identify high-risk areas and enhance resource allocation for the most affected communities. Beyond visualization, the UVA promotes data sovereignty and strengthens institutional capacities with advanced geospatial tools. This fosters collaboration among stakeholders and assists cities in meeting international reporting standards for effective climate action.
The UVA will expand to include more cities and regions globally while integrating
Melissa
additional
and Sarah, I
maps,
think we
data,
can
insights,
there.
and best practices from
as it's covered the UVA, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing. So this shows the interactive tool. We will be sharing with you shortly as the slides. You can access this, you can play around with it. But maybe we'll just summarize how this has actually been applied in Sahab in Jordan. So this city is a small, just outside of Amman. It's an industrial city which is highly susceptible to flooding, to drought, and we have looked at all of these dimensions, identified hotspots, and then prepared a list of climate resilient infrastructure development actions that will be part of a city resilience strategy and action plan. And then we will build proposals that lead to bankable projects. Unfortunately, I'm unable to share the PowerPoint, although I think it does say I'm still sharing. I have...
Indeed, when I click on it to share, it's back. Okay, I can do it.
It's back.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm so sorry, guys. If I could ask you to wrap up in just the next minute or two, that way, because I see we already have a few questions coming in, and people are really curious about the tools. So if we have just a few minutes for questions at the end, but 1 or 2 minutes now, and then we'll go to Q&A. Thank you.
Great. So you can click through and you can have a quick look at the maps. You'll see how we've identified hotspots. Our colleagues Aya, Lydia, Dima from the Jordan Country Office have been instrumental in leading this assessment. You will be able to reach out to them to get specific information about how this assessment has been done, how the vulnerability profile has been conducted, including the indicators we've looked at, including the analysis for the intersections between urban vulnerability and biodiversity, climate and biodiversity, and then the overlay of the three. And from that, we basically highlighted where exactly in a city people, infrastructure, and ecosystems are at higher risk, how specifically they are at risk, and then designed actions to address the heightened vulnerability. So I think maybe go through the next slides or so. They cover the different features and functions that we've mentioned, different layers, visualizations, and then the opportunity to scale the tool. And then we have a couple of slides on the benefits of this to Arab cities. So supporting decision-making, more optimal resource allocation for climate adaptation in cities. It facilitates stakeholder engagement, particularly with our strong participatory vulnerability mapping and validation approach that supplements and supports the GIS and modelling that we do. And a critical component as well is building the institutional and technical capacities of the local governments, particularly GIS officers, climate change, environmental specialists, and planners to assess where hotspots are located and then how to plan for more resilient climate action. A couple more slides, but I guess maybe we don't have enough time to present. But there are lots of benefits of this atlas, and we do welcome you to support us and the Rise Up through different collaboration, whether this be through partnerships to leverage funding and scale the projects, maybe replicate them in other Arab cities across the region. We also tailor the tools to look at specific indicators that are maybe more prevalent in certain countries related to perhaps migration, conflict, fragility, desertification, urban heat extreme. A lot of different lessons learned and best practices we can obtain from you as experts and practitioners in your own countries, in your own fields. And we also want to work with Arab cities, with Arab governments to scale this and look at the vertical funds to scale our approach to climate resilient planning at an urban level. So thanks very much, and apologies for the issue. Here you can see some of the resources, and they will obviously be shared with you. But if you're on a laptop just now, you can click them or you can scan the QR codes. Thank you very much.
Great. I just want to thank Raji, Serene, Lee for the excellent presentations, for showcasing very practical ways to employ climate change projections and data science in urban planning. And we have a few questions. If I can just keep you 5 minutes longer, then we'll try and work through some of these. First, we had a question from Osama Tabash. Is Palestine included in the UVA Atlas?
No, it's for now not included, but we made a presentation to the National Designated Authority, to GCF, and they were very interested actually to pick it up and understand also the reconstruction recovery process within climate resilience in mind. So hopefully soon enough, we have actually something to tell you on that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Serene. And then there was a question in the Q&A that's been up there for a while from Furat Al-Faraj, which says, from the hydrological point of view, climate change risk is mainly divided into flood and drought-related risk. And how can these two extreme events be appropriately integrated into urban planning efforts? For instance, we've seen examples of damage on flood defenses that were constructed recently, even with climate change risk considerations in mind. So I don't know if Raji, Serene, Lee, any suggestions or ideas you have for that. It's a huge challenge.
From a practicality point of view, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. From a practicality point of view, we have to very much think of increasing the infiltration wherever. He's talking not hydrological, he said hydrogeological. So if it is in hydrology only from a surface runoff, we have to create very much infiltration areas, and then to manage them also in surface areas, not let them, what they call it, mass up to a big area, which means along the way, think of areas of storage, temporary storage, that will help slow down any kind of flooding, but at the same time infiltrate into galleries, into chambers, into groundwater aquifers, into others. And this goes against what the mainstream engineering is all about. We are more apt to very much create very strong infrastructure, do more than needed asphalting and paving and so forth. We're not letting our building breathe. So if you can think of it throughout as a way to make our land and our urban areas and territorial breathe better, they will infiltrate more. So the more you let it breathe, the more you can account for it. And always think, where rain comes down, it should infiltrate down. Don't let it mass up along its way, very much so. So anyway, this is one of the things, but we can support if they want to on a particular basis. We can have a chat on that, on a separate chat.
Excellent. Thank you, Raji. And I think Lee just mentioned in the chat that there are nature-based solutions in terms of rainwater harvesting during heavy rainfalls and using that rainwater later during drought conditions. I don't know if you wanted to expand on that at all, Serene, Lee, or other MBS. that could be
That's
used.
that's exactly correct, and that's it's all nature based.
Yes. Yeah, I agree, Raji. You summarized it very well. I just wanted to highlight that this has been the approach that we're taking in Sahab. So we have prioritized these types of projects with bioswales, with rooftop rainwater harvesting, different collection points to identify where in the, so we've identified where in the city there is the most heat stress, but also where in the city there is a highest risk to flooding, urban flooding from flash floods. So we've identified where the collection zones could be, which buildings could host like a rooftop rainwater harvesting collection infrastructure. And then we would have to work out how do we use that water for a range of different sources, more efficient sources. So whether it be for cooling, the water demand for cooling in heat waves, or for other uses, whether it be agriculture or household uses for water too. So we can share this with you, how we've addressed the issue with the droughts and flooding at the same time with integrated actions, particularly NBS. So a mix of hard and soft, a mix of grey, green and blue infrastructure. And I would recommend you to get in touch with my colleagues Aya and Lydia, who are directly leading this in Sahab. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee. Again, Lee, Sarah, and Raji, thank you for your inputs today. And thanks to all of our attendees. We'll put together an email to send out the presentations and the contact information of our presenters. So for all of you who would like to follow up with more specific questions or to gain more precise information about these different tools, you'll have that option available. I just wanted to turn it over to Hussein, if you'd like to make any final closing remarks or thoughts before we close for today. And I always wish we had more time.
Yeah, so always we do that. It's always interesting to listen to very important work that we do on different scales. But thank you all for being with us today. It was our pleasure having you. We hope that you enjoyed it as we did. I want to add that you will find presentations and video of today's event on the website of the project. I will put it on the chat now just for your info so you can follow and get into there and understand more what we do in the Adaptation Fund project, Jordan and Lebanon.
Great.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much,
Salam.
everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.